got published because I didn't give up because of her. So I really have to thank Sudhaji for this. I do hope you'll convey this to her. I asked her to come today, but she was busy. I have to, of course, thank Bloomsbury India, who took a risk with this book because this book is a non-Indian book, in the sense that there's nothing Indian about it. It takes place in Salzburg, like we saw, and it's a 48-hour journey that happens in a palace in Salzburg with non-Indian characters, but with a universal theme of mystery in it. So no publisher was willing to touch it, except Bloomsbury India, who said, we'll give it a shot, and that is why the book is out. I'd like to thank Atta Galata. Keeping a bookstore open when it's supposed to be closed is really a great honor. Thank you so much. Lakshmi and Subodh have been really very cooperative and wonderful people. I'd like to thank the Salzburg Global Seminar, who you'll understand gradually how helpful they've been in bringing this book out, but they've been wonderful. They kept me in a palace, they gave me a royal treatment. I was literally royalty there while I did research for my book. My family, I have no words, they're there like pillars constantly. My mom is here, my sister's here, and thank you so much to each one of you for coming here today. I'll just tell you briefly about the book. This place the palace that you saw is actually a 300-year-old palace, and it was built by an archbishop called Fermion. He loved the palace so much that 2 years later when he died, his body was buried in the cathedral, Salzburg Cathedral, and his heart was buried in the chapel there. Over the years, the palace passed many hands over centuries, and finally it was taken on by, in early 1900s, by Max Reinhardt. Max Reinhardt was a famous director and actor, Jewish American, who totally changed the dilapidated chateau or the palace into its full glory. But he had to, when the Second World War happened, he had to flee from there because he was a Jew, and the Germans were definitely going to take charge of the palace. He died in 1942 in America, pining for his palace. So that forms the real base of this novel, which is called The Trail of Four. It takes place in 48 hours in this palace called the Schloss Leopoldskron. How many of you have seen The Sound of Music? Okay, great. So The Sound of Music was shot in this palace. So where you see, Maria von Trapp and the kids coming by the terrace. So this is all where it is. There's the palace where they have the ball. All this is based on this palace in the outskirts, and that's the palace shooting. So this palace was always known for The Sound of Music, and now hopefully it will be known for The Trail of Four. So the story goes that the Archbishop's heart, which is placed in the chapel, is stolen, and Ray Parker, who's an investigative journalist, gets these psychic visions of places he's visited, and he gets this vision that the palace is covered in smoke like a cloud. So he comes here, but he can't stop the heart from getting stolen. And in place of the heart is a note from Max Reinhardt, who's been dead for 70 years, saying, "Find my last gift to the palace, or the four pillars of Salzburg will be destroyed." So that is where the story starts, and then you have this whole 48-hour journey where the four main characters go all out to save the pillars of Salzburg from being destroyed. That's in short. Thank you.
And I think we need to get into that book real quick, so can we start off by asking Mr. Murthy to formally unwrap the book and launch it?
This is the difficult part.
Oh.
Now, one thing I learned several years ago, and that is never to speak without a written notes, and never to deviate from what is written, because a couple of times I was misinterpreted. And first time I didn't have a written note, therefore I was misinterpreted, and it took me a lot of effort to convince the press that I had known. But in this case, that's not the problem. But I have gotten used to having written notes and using the written notes to speak. So therefore, I hope you won't mind if I use my written note. First of all, thanks a lot, Manjari, Siddharth, and Lakshmi, every one of you for inviting me to release this book this evening. I have known Manjari for some time now. She and her family have been very, very kind to me and my wife. I was part of the Pune Literary Festival, which she celebrated with tremendous success. It gives me great pleasure to be part of this function, to launch the Trail of Four this evening. As a person that is not good in writing, therefore to me, my wife is very, very good in writing. She sits and writes in one stretch kind of stuff. Even though she's an engineer, she's not a historian, but she has that talent. Some people have that. But it's a very complex activity. When you write something, you have to do it in such a way that the public loves what you write, but then at the same time, when you write, by and large, as I've seen myself, the author sits in isolation. And more importantly, the author is surrounded by imaginary characters. They are the only company that the author has when he or she is writing any book. Much more so when you write a mystery. Of course, that whole travail for being surrounded by imaginary characters, by imagining what these imaginary characters would do next, is quite a fascinating fact. And therefore, I am in awe, I'm a great admirer of everybody that succeeds in bringing these imaginary characters to life and that produces something that becomes undownable. Literature, of course, is a very important part of our society. It is very important because literature is one of those things, like music, that can bring tremendous pleasure to us, even while we are alone. It doesn't require us to be with anybody else, yet we can derive tremendous pleasure. I myself have been an avid reader, but I must confess that most of my readings have been physics, mathematics, electrical engineering, computer science. But having seen my wife, right, I have developed tremendous respect and admiration for those who write other things. I also enjoy reading mysteries. I have read several mysteries. in some way play the role in the unique mystery. Because there are very, very few such books written in India by an Indian author. Because as Manjiri pointed out, it is depicted in Sanskrit in Australia. I don't know how many of you have been to Sanskrit. I have been several times. And it's a great place, particularly the wonderful palace. And there is this cabana out there. That's where Liesl and Hans, they sing this I'm 16, going on 17. It's a wonderful place. And of course, it is the hometown of Mozart. That's where Mozart was born. And Mozart happens to be my favorite composer. All of you know that writing a book in your own city, in a place that you know very well, in a place whose nooks and corners you know very well, that itself is very tough, very difficult, because it requires a lot of imagination. However, to write a book in a place that you don't know so well because you've spent only so much of time, about characters that come from a different culture, about a mystery that revolves around a character that's supposed to have lived a long time ago, is something that is not very easy. That's where I congratulate Manjiri for her tremendous success, and I have no doubt at all that the book will find a lot of interest with a lot of people that will learn. Because one of the things that, as you know, as a young man, whenever I read a few, what we used to call in Kannada, Pattedari, that is the mystery, detective novels. Each time I used to learn something new technology, or new way of tracking the culprit, etc. etc. So therefore, I'm positive that even in this, we will all have considerable learning. Once again, I thank Manjiri for this kindness for this opportunity. And I have no doubt that all the people will enjoy the training. Thank you.
Great if you give a passage from the book.
So, no, exactly. So that's the worst part about reading from a mystery book. Anything, every line is a clue. I'm sure Vasudev Murthy knows that. He's sitting behind, he's also a mystery author. Every line is a clue, so it's very difficult to read out anything without giving away. So I'm going to read the first chapter, okay? And this is where Ray Parker, who I said is an investigative journalist, he dreams of this palace, dreams where he gets a vision, and he comes to Salzburg. So he's come there now. He's on a mountain, and I'm going to read about that part. A plunge into the future. The wild question sprung to mind as his gaze skimmed the countryside. Salzburg lay like a trellised red and green map far below him. The sky was a beautiful clear blue with a hint of delicate pink, and ravens dotted the almost translucent backdrop. When the cable car had soared up towards the last leg of the journey up the mountain, Ray had experienced a moment of panic. It had been a smooth, if steep climb, but the swaying of the car had made his heart lurch, although he knew there was no reason for that. Now on the top of the Untersberg mountain, drinking in the cold, fresh air and breathtaking view, Ray was glad he had made the trip. He inhaled the air deeply. He could almost feel the cool breath travel all the way down through the nose into his body, like cool fingers feeling the way into the insides. Momentarily he grinned. It was a relief to smile. He felt his facial muscles expand and relax. It felt good, especially since the lines on his forehead seemed to be permanently creased in worry, ever since that feeling gripped him a week ago. It was in his apartment in Paris, the only place in the world where he felt at home and where he had never, ever before experienced this feeling of premonition. His suitcase had been packed and ready for the early morning flight to Mumbai. He had been lounging on the sofa, watching the late night Hindi serial, but his mind had been distracted. Memories of his last trip to India 2 years earlier weighed heavily on his mind. He had met his father after 5 years, and the reunion had been far from either loving or pleasant. Why would it be any different this time? Ray dreaded meeting him again, especially now, since he was unwell. He felt no emotional connect with his father, but his mother had insisted he visit, and Ray had reluctantly agreed. He was in between jobs anyway. A quick trip to India could help him garner some new assignments from his Indian colleagues. He had reason. The dialogues between the characters in the serial had droned on in the background, and he had no idea when he had dozed off into a deep slumber. The book he had been trying to read simultaneously had slid to the floor, lying face down, a couple of pages crumpled under their own weight. As if by magic, the palace rose, tall and elegant before his eyes, a mist swirling around it. How mesmerizing it looked, just as he remembered it. Schloss Leopoldskron. And then he saw it, a dark cap of dense grey perched on top of the beautiful edifice, like an ugly evil crown. He had woken with a jerk, his heart thudding, disorientation slowly turning to consciousness. It was the vision, a clear picture of things to be. And Ray had known, like he had on all the other occasions. He had to change plans, cancel his ticket to India, and head to Salzburg immediately. The Schloss awaited him. Luckily, he travelled light. He had simply looked up the net, booked a room in the bed and breakfast, and 2 days later, he had landed in Salzburg with his cameras. Now, as he stood gazing down at the wide, steep cliff topped with green and rust turf shrubs, Ray relaxed a bit. He pressed his silver-rimmed spectacles back on the bridge of his nose. His long hair, swept in a ponytail behind his neck, flapped in the wind, and he hugged his black leather jacket closer to him. He knew he had taken the right decision. Experience was a good teacher after all. His sudden psychic visions always led him to yet another adventure. It was a summons. He recognized it by now. A summons he could not ignore, dare not ignore, like he had done that one fatal time. The memory pricked his conscience like a needle. If only Ray shook his head. Now was not the time to pick at old wounds. Those could wait. Something important was on its way. All he had to do was wait for the signal. it would come unfailingly. The mountain paths scrambled in different directions. Tourists with walking sticks strolled down the trail to enjoy the scenic views from all angles. Were they aware that demons and dwarfs and wizards also moved around on the mountain? And somewhere deep inside the mountain, Emperor Karl slept, Ray thought suddenly, surrounded by his trusted knights and governors. But when the ravens stopped flying over the mountain and the emperor's beard had grown 3 times round the table, the emperor would rise for the last battle and the world would come to an end. At least, that's what the legend of the Untersberg mountain proclaimed. Ray's eyes inadvertently turned towards the skies. A bird flew overhead, screeching shrilly, and much to his surprise, settled down on a stone beside him. Jet black with a yellow beak, the bird cocked his head. His beady eyes stared solemnly at Ray. The next instant it flew away. Ray gripped the multi-metal pendant of foam that was a permanent fixture around his neck and stared after the Draven, his heart thudding lightly. He experienced the familiar anxiety. It was the same every single time before it actually happened. The ray had conveyed something, and there was no need to spell it out. The time had come. Thank you.
So we can now open it for questions from the audience. But,
So I open to.
Well, I think you're the one who has to answer the author.
Yes. Yeah, okay.